Good morning, Richie.
Good morning.
It is Wednesday morning paranormal talk, journey into the unknown with Mr. Richie here. Now, we'll give a few minutes for our friends to pop in, and let me go check our description for our Twitch, because sometimes Twitch gets a little wonky. There we go. Should be good. It will try to still have the write up from the last stream, which is not helpful. That's not what we're doing. All right.
No.
All right. All right. Now, you mentioned last week, you hinted at it a little bit. You have an interest and some experience with some cryptids in some of
Oh,
your
yes.
adventures.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked a,
Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, you talked a little bit, and then I'm like, ooh, hey, Brooke. A little bit, you had a run in with Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Who else have you had a
Yeah.
run in with?
I've seen fairies. I've had a run in with what I believe was a puckwudgie.
Oh, hoo ha?
What is it?
No, oh, what did you say?
Oh, I had a run in what I think was a puckwudgie.
What is that?
So I'm gonna have to look that up to get the exact description, but it is not a nice thing at all. Um, it was my own fault. I mean, it attacking me, I had it coming. I was running my mouth. So, it is Pukwudgie translates to person of the wilderness. They are small creatures ranging from knee height to about 3 feet tall, with human like features yet sporting longer ears, noses, and fingers. Their skin has been described as gray and smooth and have often been compared to trolls or goblins.
Huh.
There's also some more like Native American lores where they can like go invisible and um, they're just really creepy looking. But I caught it. I think, well, obviously, if it was a puckwudgie, I caught it while it was invisible.
Okay, I was going to
Because,
ask because I'm looking up pictures in another tab to see if we can put one on screen just to
yeah,
give
that's
us.
what I was.
Did you? So you didn't get to see it fully then?
No, but I have I don't know how it really works with the Fae because I consider it a Fae.
Hmm.
I consider it part of that family, which it is. But so when the good ones come around, I will usually smell like bubble gum. Which when you're in the middle of the forest and you smell bubble gum, it doesn't really make sense when you're used to smelling the trees and the dirt.
Right.
Um, but when the darker side of them comes around, I usually smell cinnamon because it's still sweet, but it's spicy. So that
Hmm.
tells me I'm dealing with something darker. And that day, I wasn't in a very good mood. I actually went out to the woods to get in a better mood. And I was walking, I smelled bubble gum, and then all of a sudden I started smelling cinnamon. And I was just like, you know what? I am just completely, yep, there it is. I'm like, I am just completely not in the mood for you guys. I have 6 rounds in my 380. If you come after me, I'm not even going to hesitate today. And I think because they've seen me before and they knew that that's not how I am, they're just like, we're going to warn me. Because normally they will. lure hikers or um and they've been known to like push or trip hikers off of cliffs. But they caught me in a place where it was flat and I couldn't actually fall off a cliff. Like the only thing below me was dirt. So luckily but I know that it was something because I actually felt the hand go around my ankle and yank me. So,
Oh, well, thanks for popping in, Cheryl.
hi,
And
Mom.
oh, is that your mom?
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Richie's mom. Hey, Kathy. You know Greg, psychic medium
Yes,
Greg. Greg, have you had run-ins, if you're still there, with the puck wedgie in all of your places that you've been and things that you've done? Um, it would be interesting to see what Greg has had.
for sure.
Maybe compare stories. No, that's this little being, I don't think is one that many people hear of or learn about when,
Yeah.
kind of starting to dabble into a fairy realm. Um, let's see. You know,
I
you
I didn't know what it was. Um, I had looked up. I looked up what it was because I know that in the Harry Potter universe, she usually writes her things, with creatures that exist in mythologies and stuff.
okay.
In one of the Ilvermorny houses, which is Hogwarts in America, Ilvermorny, one of their houses is Pukwudgie, and that's the house I was sorted into. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to find out what the hell this is. So I looked it up, and I'm like, wait, no, because see, I'm not mean. I'm not trying to.
Right.
I'm not opposed to tripping somebody off a cliff. I'm just not. I'm not actively ready to do it.
Just because you've thought it doesn't mean you've done it.
Right.
Now, Greg says he's ran into something similar in the South. So, Greg, were you like on a hike in the woods, or like how did you run across this similar being?
Yeah,
Um, and if Greg is ever, has availability, maybe on a Wednesday morning, we should pull Greg in.
for sure.
Emily was going to join us, but she had a last minute emergency. She's like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, okay, is what it is. We'll
Yeah.
we'll keep running. Coins and gold says never encountered one.
About your boy.
I think
I
the
hope you.
closest, that I've ever had fairy wise, it was after Marianne came and cleared the house of the creepy old guy that, was hanging around bedrooms and stuff. And then
Yeah.
like little things were still happening. And at one point, like was sitting on my sofa, was kind of like leaned over and reading. So I had my legs up next to me and my cat was sitting there. And it felt like a small person, like 3 or 4 year old came up and just like smacked the couch cushion as hard as they could by my feet. And I'm like, okay, you can't ignore that. And, the
No.
cat went running, cat Sith went running. And so called Marianne. I'm like, oh, we still have a problem. And she's like, you don't have ghosts, but you got fae folk in the house. And
Yep. There you go.
like, seriously, can you give me a break? Give me a week,
Yeah.
to
It's. I feel that way sometimes. It's like, man, stuff just stopped happening. Like, can you leave me alone for 5 minutes?
yeah. So Greg
But
said yes, in LA. He was in the woods during twilight and said, I did speak to the property owners, and the other people have had seen something similar. Huh. I didn't know there were
okay.
woods in LA. Like it's always pictured of nothing but buildings and sidewalks and
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
Um,
What you see on.
oh, Louisiana, that makes more sense. Makes more sense, Louisiana.
Oh, gotcha.
LA, I'm thinking city.
Okay, so he just
Karen?
okay. I got you.
Yeah, I'm like, where would the fairies hide in concrete? Makes more sense, Louisiana. And that whole
Louisiana.
area just seems to be nothing but
I was gonna say if we start on Louisiana, oh my goodness, that can take forever. There's so much down there. I mean, there's so much,
Hmm.
rumors. I mean, things that there's thing. I always say that I believe in everything, but I don't necessarily think that's true because I don't. mm, Because when somebody says Louisiana, I think New Orleans, and I'm like, okay, so there's vampires, like blood sucking Count Dracula vampires, but I don't know about that. That's something in my head that I can't wrap my head around the idea of vampires.
Hmm.
But I also used to tell people they were crazy when they said that fairies were real, and I used to say, well, when Tinkerbell knocks on my window, I'll believe it.
Well, you didn't get Tinkerbell.
I didn't. I got a puck wedgie snatching my ankles, and I got them in sort of when I seen the good ones a few minutes later, it was like little balls of light.
Mm,
Um, you know, they were like little, like I don't know, about that big,
hmm.
and they were like honestly looked like almost the brightness I can describe it is almost like LED light brightness out
Oh,
in and I'm out in the sun, so when I'm seeing this little ball of light over the sunlight in a different way, it's like okay, so I'm seeing something. So then I texted Linda Wagner and I'm like, this is what I saw. I know that you know about fairies. I just want to know, can you tell me what happened? And she's like, well, yeah, they've been around you for a long while. They're just finally seeing fit to show themselves to you. And I'm
so
sitting here like, but why'd they have to do it while I was in a bad mood?
try to cheer you up. The good ones. Like it ain't
Oh, that's
that bad,
fair.
Richie. Like it'll get better.
Yeah.
Brooks, like we call that an open-minded skeptic. Like, I the possibility is there, but I'm just not to that point yet.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I can agree with that. There are certain things that you know, I believe most things exist, but the things that I can't necessarily believe exist, I believe there's a possibility that they could exist, but
mhm,
it's just something that I would absolutely have to see proof of for me to be like, yes, this exists.
right. Well,
Like,
hello, Sarah. Um, I think being an open-minded skeptic is a pretty safe
mhm,
stance, right? Because you never want to make a full-blown proclamation without having some sort of substance behind it, and to
yeah,
keep yourself from like becoming either too afraid or too
mhm,
involved in something and then find out later like wow, I was so upset over something that I didn't need to be. So
right.
like that healthy bit of skepticism I think is great, for everybody to kind of keep in mind. Practice a little bit
Um, yeah, I wish everybody was some kind of open-minded because, like, it drives me nuts when people are closed-minded because, like, you're so set that you can't even believe in the possibility that something can exist that can challenge your beliefs.
of. Hmm.
Like if I was that way, I wouldn't believe in anything because I was raised by my dad and he claims he doesn't believe in, ghosts and goblins and cryptids and all that.
Hmm.
I think he secretly does. I just think you know, he he's like just don't talk about it because it's not real, probably because it scares him or because of admitting that possibility is almost like admitting, that something is
Hmm.
there that challenges your beliefs that could, and it's like people don't want to do that.
Right.
And and I'm like, I get it. I really do understand what you're doing here, but open up some. Don't be so closed that you can't see past your nose.
Now, I was reading up a little bit. Some people have been able to catch fairies with ghost hunting equipment. Have you ever had that happen when you're out and about, maybe outside, and all of a sudden you're getting little people interacting with the equipment somehow?
No, I haven't. Most of the places that when I use my equipment, has been places that I think are just a little too dark to have nice fairies around it. I mean, it would have darker stuff in there, but I've not had fairy. The only interaction I've had that I know of, let me put it that way, with fairies was that day when I seen them after the Pukwudgie tripped me.
Gotcha. And you
That's
didn't have any equipment running. You just kind of had
no, yeah. I was just on a hike.
Okay. And you said
Yeah.
like you were running your mouth. Were you just like this stupid trail, these damn trees, these like what do you
No,
saying
um,
that got its attention?
so I had already started smelling them. Like I knew they were around. I smelled the cinnamon, so I knew there was darker ones around. And I was in a bad mood. That's the reason I was out there in the first place, was to try and get myself straight. But like I said last week, I don't go in the woods without protection.
Mhm.
So I had my 380, which isn't going to do much to anything, but I'm like, I got 6 rounds in this thing and I will use it today. So please just back off me and do not come near me. And about 5 minutes later, I'm picking myself up off the ground and wiping dirt off my face. So I'm like, okay, listen, I'm just in a bad mood. I wasn't actually going to do anything.
It's like what
So
good is your
now,
gun to something invisible?
when I go out to them woods, as soon as I walk in, I'm like, okay, everybody, I'm here. Feel free to walk with me. Just don't get directly in my face. You can walk beside me, but we're good.
So Karen came in a little bit later. She's asking like, what is your reference for the bubble gum smell?
Um, that's just, oh my goodness. I was tripping over those words real bad. Um, so when I say bubble gum, I mean, it's just a really sweet smell. And to me, um, the closest sweet that I can think of is like bubble gum. I don't know if I made that if it's any clearer putting it that way. It's just super, super sweet smell.
Okay. And so that's when you know you have the more friendlier hanging around.
Yeah, and when I get the darker ones, it's more like cinnamon, because cinnamon's still sweet, but it's also spicy. So it's like it's still fey, but it's not good.
And it's funny because I have cinnamon in my coffee right now. I love cinnamon.
Oh, I love cinnamon, but that's
might appreciate the sassy fairies who enjoy the cinnamon a little more.
I love putting cinnamon in my hot chocolate.
The troublemaker kind. Um, there was, and now this is where I'm horrible with history. Around 2012, 2013, a hurricane came through and like Ohio actually got hit with a bunch of the rain, right? And everybody was out of power, flooding on our end. And my house, like the basement had flooded enough that it took out the pilot light and everything of the furnace. And so at that time I was kind of, starting to really appreciate and work with the land spirits and the fae of my property line. And
Yeah,
hey, I don't know if I'd say I'm a fairy, but then again, Maleficent was a fairy. She wasn't a witch. That's what everybody gets wrong. So maybe. And I just remember I'm like, you know what? We need to get this to relight because we can't afford to do a hot water tank with everything else we were having to fix. And I'm just like, all
yeah.
right, little house brownies, here's some bread and honey, and like, let's go make this pilot light work. And it
Yeah.
took a couple, tries, but it lit up, and I'm like, "Oh, thank you, little brownies. Thank you, little brownies."
Yeah, I've read about how there are some I forget where I read it, but it was talking about how like there are really creatures like house elves that will come in and help with certain things. And I'm like, oh, can they go ahead and come in here and clean my house then? Because like I'm tired of cleaning.
I
Like,
agree. Fall and winter is the best, all the spice smells, right? Um, all the spice smells, and I'm the peppermint fan during wintertime. I'm like, you can keep your pumpkin spice. I want the peppermint. I want the cinnamon. I am
yes,
not a pumpkin spice fan.
I'm not either. When it comes to fall, it's apple cider for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Get some of the mulled wine going in the crock pot, and life is good. Um, it's funny that you mentioned that, and I've always thought this was kind of funny. Having been a Girl Scout for a little while when I was younger, so I'm like, this sucks. I am done doing it. And not because it was scouting, it was because the leader that we had at the time, all like we went from having a leader because Army brat,
Mhm.
right? My leader like took off with her husband because the Army said, "You live here now." We went from like
Yeah,
camping and doing fun things outside, and it was always different. And if it rained, then we came in and we sewed something for a patch to the new leader. Like we never left the house. And I'm like, there's only so many sewing and cooking badges. Like this sucks. I'm done.
yeah,
But remembering like what some of those badges were and the things that they were teaching young people, and I'm like, how funny that at that age group of brownies, most of those kids are about that height learning those things,
yeah,
and they correlate in with the height and description of being brown, of the brownie fairies, and how they can be helpful as long as you work with them and honor them. And
yeah.
and I'm just like, that's odd that they cross over. Hello,
Or is it?
rating in. Hello, hello. We are currently talking with Richie. Richie is a paranormal investigator and author. His book, Journey into the Unknown. Um, we are currently discussing fairies, and some interactions. So if you have an interaction that maybe you'd like to share, put it in chat. Um,
Absolutely.
Richie, um, you were talking about how you had a puck wedgie and decide that your trek through the woods in a grumpy manner was not tolerable for them.
Yeah. I haven't been, and I've made sure that even if I am grumpy, I get my attitude in check before I get out of my car.
Before you They're not going to put up with that.
No, I sit there in my car and I look in the mirror. I was like, "Now you better get it together because next time they might trip you off a cliff."
Yeah.
And just so I get, like I said, I get myself in check there, and then I get out as soon as I walk in the woods. I'm like, "All right, guys, I'm here. Feel free to walk with me. I'm going to be here for the next 6 miles or however far I walk."
Yeah. Kathy, I don't. I vaguely remember the badge books that you had to like fill out and get signed, but I don't remember that one. Um, but hello, all the raiders coming in. Um, but I always thought it was interesting, that the brownie age group for Girl Scouts always kind of put them in that similar
Yeah,
description for those little
yeah,
house fairies. And I'm just like, what are you trying to say? And if you don't offer them,
exactly.
they're the things that they like the honey, the bread, and like sweets, then they can cause, ruckus through the house.
Yeah,
And instead of being helpful and like taking care of, house things like, hey, let's get that pilot light to light, maybe they caught. And I'm
right.
like, oh, just how that what those little kids could do if they're having a bad day and throwing a temper tantrum. I'm like, how
There
funny,
you go. That makes
you know.
sense. Yeah.
Cool.
I actually when I was in when I was doing the Paracon at West Virginia a few weeks ago, a lady came up to me. She was describing to me what she had seen, and automatically, like as soon as she started, I just knew. I'm like, "You seen a fairy?" And she's like, She's like, but that scares me because they're mischievous. I was like, they can be. I'm like, but if you show them respect and you're not rude,
Hmm.
chances are you guys will live peaceful and actually really good things might happen. I'm like, so, like get them a little house, put it out by your rose bush, and, just a few other little odds and ends things. I can't remember what all I said. Probably knowing me has something to do with sweets.
Right.
And I'm like, just leave them an offering, buy them a little house, put it out there, tell them they're welcome, whatever. I said, just be really nice. And like, but don't start getting disrespectful because they will get revenge at that point and you will not like it.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's treat them as you would any other. Like give them the respect.
I mean,
Don't
it's just,
abuse the relationship that you build with them.
yeah, I mean, it's just like a human being. You're not gonna be a jerk to a human and expect nice things to happen
So what
because
was she describing at that Paracon?
so she was telling me that basically the same way that I seen it, she'd seen this little ball of light that didn't make any sense to be where it was, and she smelled a sweetness that didn't belong to any of her flowers. She
Mhm.
saw it out by her garden, and I said I would ask you if you smelled anything sweet, but since you were near your roses when you saw it, I don't think that's gonna really help much. And she's like, no, but it wasn't roses. It smelled more like candy. And I'm like, that's definitely a fairy. If it wasn't flowers and you smelled candy and you saw light, you probably saw a fairy.
So that's funny. Like somebody and there's Richie with the stoic face of mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I try, I'm getting better with my facial expressions, but I stay pretty focused. Like when somebody's asking me for advice and I'm listening to their story, even if it's a great story about some, nice fairies, it's like, I just have this serious face because somebody's asking me something and they need serious Richie for a minute. And it's like, okay.
Well, no, and I just find that it's not a bad thing, but
Yeah.
it's if anything, it's going to be helpful, right? Because if they're worked up over something, you're not going, "Oh my God!" You're just like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we got it."
It's just, the problem though is sometimes and I know I feel this sometimes when I'm telling people something and they give me the kind of face that I give people when they're talking, it seems like they're listening to you, but they don't believe what you're saying.
Hmm.
And, with me, that's not the case at all. I believe every word you're saying. I'm just focused on what you're saying so I can give you the best advice possible.
Right.
And because I've seen so much, I'm not going to freak out or be shocked about anything. It's like, yeah. One thing that I've always said, people are always like, I was going to tell somebody that this happened, but I'm afraid that they're going to think I'm crazy. I'm like, you're not crazy. Something did happen. Now let's figure out what it was.
Right. Like you're not. Let's work this
It
through. Let's calm down.
might not be what you think it is. We might have a perfectly reasonable explanation, but something happened, and me and you are going to figure it out together. And if it was something that outside of the realm of the normal, then I will help you figure out where to go next.
So, Chris, who will be reading with us this evening for our Woo Woo Wednesday readings, says, I have found fairy rings in my yard several times. I have yet to see them on my property, but I have seen them in the woods on my way to work.
Okay.
Now, have you had any experience like, have you dared to step into a ring and like experience anything? Or Chris, have you jumped in the I admit
Well,
I have done it and
you
was like,
were
now what?
asking me. You were asking me that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking Chris.
Well,
Oh,
both of you.
no,
Both of you.
I've actually never seen an actual fairy ring. I've only just seen them flying around. So, but to be honest with you, if I saw one, I don't know that I would have the guts to step into it.
I'm kind of that troublemaker. I have stepped in
I mean,
many.
I'd probably look at it
And
and be
I'm
like, oh,
like,
okay, I saw what I saw.
why am I still here? Why? I wanted to go somewhere else. Why am I still here?
Yeah,
Anticlimactic.
but I have always been that person though, running my mouth when you're scrolling through Facebook. Somebody, there's that picture of this random doorway in the woods. It's like you see this door in the woods. Are you going to walk through it? And I'm like, well, of course I'm going to walk through it. It's a door. I want to know what's on the other side. But
and you're
then,
right.
then
Brooke's
when I
like,
think
Marianne
about
has
it, it's like,
that if she doesn't believe you.
yeah,
Uh,
I have that face. That's just my face. That's just that's my default setting.
I do tend to carry RBF a lot, keeps the weak ones away. But I've often joked with Marianne that I was going to piece together like a collage of her different expressions and her sayings and get her eye roll on camera.
Mhm.
Just over the years of knowing when she's had enough, when the client needs to move on, when
Yeah.
she's done, and being able to read that and kind of move it on for her. Harder to do when we would do the in-person ghost walks and she would like take off somewhere, and I'm like, great, where'd she go? Can't help her. She's
Yeah.
off somewhere. I'm like, well, now she's on her
Well,
own.
I can give you a helpful hint about talking to me in person.
Mhm.
If we're talking and if I'm standing up talking to somebody and I've had enough and I know that, everything coming out their mouth at that point is either annoying or crap, I don't walk away. I sit down. And I'm just, because if I'm invested, I'm standing up because I'm like, okay, I want to be at eye level with you so I can take in everything perfectly.
Mhm.
But when it's like, okay, it's been nothing but BS from the beginning, and at this point, it's just annoying. I will sit down. I'm not going to interrupt because I'm not a rude person. I'm not going to tell you, all right, that's enough. But I will sit down and be like, and
Right.
basically pretend I'm listening.
I agree. I would do it so much more often. Um,
Mhm.
Chris, and Ren, she's like, I also believe that we need more people who can validate others. Folks can be real quick to dismiss of what sounds crazy to them because that personal opinion and personal experience will always like kind of
Yeah,
come in and then like keep that door closed and not even listen to somebody else's experience because
yeah.
they haven't gone through it themselves.
There's times where there's times, and I don't know, maybe it's just me because I've talked to so many people, but there's times where as soon as they start talking, I already know you're lying, you're just saying what you think I want to hear. There's other times where it takes longer for me to understand that because they are really good at telling the story, but at some point, and it's just body language, I think, because I can read body language fairly well to know when somebody's lying or not. Um, and then there's other times where it's like right away, I just know that they're telling the truth. Or in the beginning, I'm kind of like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know. That sounds a little far fetched. And then the further we get into the story, I'm just like, because all the reactions that my face should be having happen inside my head while I'm, you know, gathering my thoughts on this situation. And it's just like, so at some point, when, I'll be like, oh my God, yeah, yes, 100%. I agree. Yes, that definitely happened. Like, okay, cool. Yes. Even though my face is kind of like, meh. my brain is doing my the facial expressions are happening inside my head. They're just not happening on my face. But yeah, I mean, I will, even when I know the from the beginning, I just don't believe what they're saying. I will still let them talk because apparently they wanted to talk about something,
Hmm.
or they needed to talk, or like maybe, I found that sometimes people will come up and give stories just because they have nobody else to talk to.
Right. Well, and I think
And
sometimes people will exaggerate stories because nobody's listened to them. So, like, maybe if I make it more so,
yeah,
somebody will finally listen, and not realize sometimes that'll have the opposite, effect.
yeah, I mean, because when you overindulge a story, when you overindulge something, it makes it less believable because it's like, okay, like, I don't know, like, a podcast I listened to, the guy said there can be two stories almost exactly the same, where one person says they were picked up and tossed across the room, and it's completely believable, and then another person tells the story, and it's like, yeah, no, that didn't happen,
Hmm.
and it's like, I totally get what you're saying because, yes, like, I
Right.
mean, I give people the benefit of the doubt as best I can.
That is true. I like that. It's socially acceptable to receive a text that you have to respond to ASAP and then walk away. I have certain staff members know certain facial expressions or
Mhm.
eye looks, that if I get trapped by, somebody who is just, going on and on and on
Mhm.
and on, and I'm like, I have a million things I've got to call that's getting ready, I'll just kind of look at them and, like, come save me.
Yeah,
And they're like, oh, hey, Melissa, we've got this phone call. I'm like, thank you. Um,
yeah,
and it just happens, right? Because they're excited, but it's just like, oh my
yeah. I mean, it does, and I'm guilty of going on and on and on and on to the point that sometimes I get on my own nerves.
God. Now,
And then
Chris,
the person,
I was
okay,
just gonna
yeah,
say,
go ahead.
Chris, talking about the fairy ring, she's like, I'm very careful. I walk around them and respect them. This is probably why I've not seen them in my yard. And it could very well be that they don't feel the need to come,
Yeah,
interact. Um, like
maybe,
myself, who I jump in there and be like, I'm tired of being here. Come get me. Where are we going? What are we doing? Um,
yeah,
I'm still
uh, maybe, proceed with caution. Go up to it, go up to the ring, and I don't know how to approach that. Like, talk to them like you're knocking on the door or something. I don't know.
right. And that's a good call, good point. You don't want them to cause issues with your outside animals because you have a lot
That's
of fun animals outside.
Yeah, that's fair.
I am looking up real quick in a whole separate tab on number 75. uh, like, can you leave offerings at those rings? Like, if you were like, hey, I see your ring. Do you want to come be friends? Uh,
Yeah, I'm sure something like that could happen.
I know usually like honey and bread are always usually pretty safe for like most beings and deities. Worked for the house fairies, my brownies that I had.
Mhm.
But maybe, unless you're good, Chris, unless you're like, I am good with them knowing that they're there, we don't need to interact.
Yeah, 100%. Me, I wanna interact, like, I wanna sit I wanna sit down and have tea and cakes with Bigfoot, so,
Well, according to, was it Progressive or was it the beef jerky commercial? His name is Daryl.
probably the people.
Apparently, he likes beef jerky, but he might
Yeah.
like finer things like tea and, you know,
The thing is
soda.
just because they live in the woods does not mean that they're not sophisticated.
I mean, he could have a damn nice, fine cabin in the woods. It's like all windows. He's looking
Right.
at everything. He's got a nice ass
Right.
tea bar. We know no.
Yeah. And he might have the wife at home sitting there with a teapot, and he's sitting here drinking like this with his pinky out.
I mean, yeah, he's posh as hell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, half his cupboards could be tea from all over the world. And he's going to talk about the finer things of tea.
And there are certain groups that believe that Bigfoot can teleport and travel, so that wouldn't be too far of a stretch.
I mean, if he's interdimensional, why not?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
there's several different. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning, and he was describing. I forget. He was talking about the Fae, which I think was a sign that we were going to end up talking about Fae today. But he had mentioned something, and I couldn't help. The only thing I could think of was Mothman. I'm like, what if Mothman is the same type of creature? They're seen around. It was something to do with Michigan. Some kind of creature in Michigan that was almost like Mothman. He was seen on the Silver Bridge and everything in West Virginia. Mothman was, but this creature was supposedly seen like dancing in the flames of the Great Detroit Fire and all this other stuff. And I'm like, but what? And they were said to once upon a time have been protectors. And I'm like, well, what if they still are protecting? What if they take this terrifying form to scare you away because they know something's coming? Like the Mothman, like he was seen on the bridge, I think like 3 days before it collapsed. I'm like, what if he was trying to scare you off the bridge because he knew it was going to fall? I don't believe that he caused the collapse. I think he knew and he was trying to scare people away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so what if he was actually doing this to protect you, but because he's a monster, he caused it?
Yeah, he got the bad rap because he's scary looking. I mean, maybe Mothman is a low grade engineer and was just trying to fix the damn thing. And people just wouldn't stay off.
That too.
He did not put enough orange barrels around that bridge to keep people from going on it. I mean, he needs to come get some barrels from ODOT here in Ohio because they're
Lord knows they got enough to spare.
like every time I leave my house, there's yet more barrels on another road. And I'm like, I only have a mile and a half to drive. How am I running out of roads to drive?
Yeah, I know when I get off of 71, when I'm coming to the store, I get off 71 there by the airport. And as soon as I get around that tight curve on the exit there, it's barrels forever. And I'm like, I thought it was bad in Mansfield, but good grief.
It's just orange, that's our state color now, orange.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't really have a color, but it's orange. And maybe that figure that was dancing around in the fire, maybe what we thought was dancing was him just frantically trying to keep that contained.
Maybe so, yeah.
I think that was some weird interpretive dancing fire prevention skills that he had going on.
Yeah, and I mean, it was other people who described his dancing described it sort of like Native American ritual dancing or something. And I'm like, well, maybe he was doing a rain dance trying to get it to rain on the fire to put it out.
I mean, maybe. Or like appeasing the little fire gods, like, stay here.
Yeah. I'm looking it up right now because it's going to bother me until I figure out what it's called.
Yeah, Bigfoot is the bomb, right? I love it now that it's more common for people to get the Bigfoot like garden statues in their yards.
Yeah.
The first time I saw one, I'm like, I want one to go with my little grumpy gnomes in my yard. Never got one though. Just never, like I would see one in I'm like, where the hell did you get that?
Yeah.
There
is a garden center near where I live, and they have them, and Um, my friend wanted to get one, but her wife said absolutely not. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
It was a Nain Rouge. I hope I'm saying that right.
Hmm.
Nain Rouge. It's described as wearing what looks like a really nasty torn fur coat. Um,
Sounds like a bad rave.
mm,
Sounds like a bad rave going on right there.
yeah,
Um,
it's
now,
another word. It's considered a hobgoblin.
yeah, that is a bad rave. Nobody's having fun
So
there. Whoops.
it's
My
bad.
do not disturb just wore off. We're going to put that back on. Sorry, guys, that annoyingly loud ting there. So back to the fairy ring real quick, Chris. If you still wanted to make friends, the traditional offering gift for fairy circles is one of food, such as bread or cake, or fermented beverages, such as wine or beer. So get them drunk, like first date, wine and bread, or beer and cake, wine and cake, beer and bread. Take your pick. It's okay, Brooke. um, Brooke texted me. That's what it's Brooke's fault. Um, so if you have fairy circles and you want to start making friends, leave them some wine and
Yeah.
some bread or cake. Get you some little ho hos, little Swiss cake rolls.
And I mean, and if you're leaving an offering and you're being nice, there shouldn't be any problems. They might actually help with the animals.
Hmm.
Things might get better.
Might help with that one latch that you were telling me about, Chris. How your one horse knows how to do that latch just right. If it's not secure, maybe they'll help come and make sure that latch.
Maybe they might be like, all right, we're getting tired of that horse, so we're going to go ahead and help you with it now.
Yeah, we're going to make sure it stays away.
And now that we're friends, we're going to figure this out and we're going to help you.
I did it. It was me. It's Brooke. Brooke is that person. Yeah. So what better reason to go buy some Little Debbie snack cakes?
What better reason
One
to
for you, one for the fairies.
what better reason to have an excuse to go out and buy some wine?
Right. And it's funny that wine is used in so many like offerings and traditions. Like it's used
Yeah.
even in our shaman tradition, making the spachos and stuff. Right. Get them fat and drunk and they can't do anything. They can't mess with anything if they're too schnookered over there in the corner. Fat and drunk. And they can't run very fast when they're too fat. So they're not messing with anything.
Um, that on a personal level.
I don't run anyway, and I've lost weight.
I don't run. I
If
haven't.
running, something's coming.
Exactly.
Hey, we're kind of talking about fairies now. We're kind of goofing off about fairies. Richie's had some run-ins with fairies, and so if anybody wants to share stories, we can. And you don't mind if we put it up on screen. And we're trying to convince Chris to like get her fairies that leave the fairy rings in her yard fat and drunk, so they can help take care of her horses. Why not? It's a lot of
Absolutely.
work.
I think it's a great idea.
Um,
If I ever seen fairy rings in my yard, I promise the very next time I seen it, there would be some offering put out there right away.
yeah. Let's see. So if anybody has any kind of last minute questions, because we're about 10 minutes to 11, even if it's off the fairies, because Richie does paranormal investigation. He's ran into some things. He's had some things happen. He's been in a lot of, kind of well-known places, at least here in Ohio and West Virginia. He uses all sorts of equipment, including like the dowsing rods. So if you have questions about any of that, feel free to ask. He likes questions. Chair,
Let's just make it easy.
if Chair had any stories, because if I remember correctly, Chair lives in a land full of fairies. No pressure, though. You don't have to share. Right? Put them little boogers to work. Make them earn their keep.
There it is.
They can shovel some hay, they can scoop some poop, they can do something.
Fun.
Even if it is making sure those latches are locked at night. Let's see, make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think we did. And it's a safe space to tell your story and not be told that you're crazy, because
Yeah.
we're all crazy here. Welcome to your tribe.
My little Cheshire cat over here, we're all mad here.
Right.
I got that tattooed on me so people don't forget.
And we have tea and we have coffee, so we can fit right in with the posh ass Bigfoots
no?
in his stories. Mr. Daryl.
And I just ate me some beef jerky before I got on here, so I'm all set.
So you were prepared for Bigfoot talk.
I was already ready.
We might have to record going out and like what local wood setting in Ohio.
So
Is Bigfoot being that we can go like try to catch him?
Where I seen him, which is about 15, 20 minutes from where I live, is Mohegan State Park.
Okay.
I know that, I don't know when it is, but somebody from Finding Bigfoot is doing an event there, either coming up. I know they did one last year too, and I know that I wanted to go to that and talk to them about it, but I forgot.
You had one job, Richie. One job. We can go do our own at some point. Hopefully before it gets too cold. We'll have to line that up. I'm sure Emily would be all aboard on that. Or do it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The big question will be like, how well is cell service there?
Well, not great. It's spotty. I mean, you get it sometimes, but not all the time.
Might have to be a record and then upload later, maybe.
Yeah, that's normally when I go out there, I take pictures all the time because the trail I walk has 2 waterfalls.
Oh.
And a cover bridge. And so I'm like, especially when it's been raining and I go out there and the waterfalls are really like, going hard. I'm like, oh, I got to get some picture and video of this because who knows how long it's going to be before they're going that good again.
Right. Now, Chris says she swear I saw one in Valley View at Tinker Creek Park a few years ago.
Valley View. Where is Valley View? In Tinker Creek Park. Where is that?
Let's Google Map. Oh, please. Somebody cue the intermission music.
Anytime somebody asks me anything, I'm like, let me Google it.
Right. Valley View. Let's see. There we go. She said between Walton Hills and Bedford.
Yep, I just got it pulled up here.
And I know Mary Ann says that the east side of Cleveland, too, especially along Lake Erie, is very prominent for UFO. So, like, what's going on the eastern side of Ohio?
That's
what's
what
going on out there? Why is it so weird there?
It's about 73 minutes for me to drive to get there. I might end up getting there.
That's not too far.
I mean, when I first came back into the paranormal field a couple years ago, I said, this time around, I don't want to only do ghost hunting investigations. I want to do monster hunting too.
Okay.
But
stepping up your game.
Up to now,
hi, baby boy.
I'm the only one I knew who wanted to do it. Everybody else is afraid to go look for ghosts. They're afraid to go look for monsters. It's like the only reason you're afraid of it is because you might actually find it.
And then what do you do with it once you make eye contact?
And
that's not written in the manuals very often.
For our local Bigfoot, I'm not afraid of him because the first time we met, I did make eye contact.
Okay.
And technically, we made eye contact the second time. We had a little stare down, and then he disappeared on me before I was able. I had to look away because I couldn't find my phone with my just reaching. So I had to look away, and by the time I got back to him, he was gone. And I'm like, oh man, I missed it. I almost got a picture. It was so close.
Kathy's like, we get them on the west side too. See, now we're gonna have to get some stories collected for the west side because I always hear about stuff on the east.
Yeah.
Though Lorain County, I guess, is a hot spot for some UFO activity. Oh, and Karen saw Bigfoot 35 years ago with her dad.
Oh.
Was it east side or west side? Now we have the east side versus west side. Like, we're gonna have to start throwing some game circles here for paranormal. Like, what's up? To have a yeah, the UFOs, especially like Lorain. But I lived in Lorain County for so long, and I would purposely sit out on my porch, like, I want to see, let me see, and would never see a thing. And I'm like, why don't they like me? Why won't you guys get me off this planet? Between the fairy rings and UFOs, why am I still here?
I seen one last week, and I'm just sitting here, and I was, I mean, I was on my way to work, and I actually kind of like my job because it's where I get to sit down and, do all my writing and research and make my stuff, make my bracelets and stuff. So I'm like, I like my job, so I really don't want to leave. But I seen one, I was so close to just going, hey, I'm here, come right here, right here.
Right.
And at first I wasn't sure what I was seeing. I'm like, okay, there's no way that's UFOs moving very, very slow. But the closer I got to it, the more I realized, and I was walking, so it took me a minute. The closer I got, the more I realized, okay, that's just sitting there. That's not moving at all. Like, it's not even moving slow. It's not moving.
Right.
And so I ran it. I took off running because I was going to go inside and get my non-believer coworker and make her come out and be like, "Look, there's the lights right there. It's not moving. It's not a tower. We've been here for 2.5 years. That light's not supposed to be there." As soon as I got to the top of the hill,
gone.
It said, I said, "Damn!" Like right when I was getting ready to, and as soon as it was out of my sight, she walked out the door to light a cigarette. I'm like, you couldn't be like 30 seconds faster?
Like, why don't they like you? Why don't they want you to see?
Well, I get that part. I get why they don't like her. He's the reason that I would want them to take me away.
So Vicky says, moved here from Montana years ago, saw lots of bear, but no Bigfoot. Probably a good thing.
I don't know. I'd be more afraid of bear than Bigfoot. Because Bigfoot's not.
Right. There's at least with Bigfoot, you could be like, don't eat me. And he'd be like, got it.
You might listen because, they're supposed, some people believe that I think they're smarter than any human because if they weren't, how could they stay so well hidden?
Yeah. I mean, I generally really do believe that humanity is on the low end of like intelligence and everything compared to all that's out there, the possibility.
I believe humans are 100% the dumbest creatures in existence.
So Karen was seeing all the stuff on the west side before development started going up in the Strongsville High Point area. So Chair says, at Dublin's Hellfire Club, legend tells of a stranger joining a card game on a stormy night. When a player dropped a card, he noticed the stranger had cloven hooves for feet. The mysterious guest, believed to be the devil, then vanished in flames, adding to the club's eerie reputation. I've heard similar stories like this from other places about demons at a poker game. Do we have like that type of lore here in America or in any of the bigger cities that you can think of?
There are some, old saloons and stuff that have stories like that. We don't have any in Ohio, I know that for sure. But there are some that, and especially in like the West, when everything was wild and, there were no rules. All kinds of whatnot happened out there. So, I can't, I've heard of them, but off the top of my head, I can't remember, where they were, but I know we do have them. Maybe that's something I can research this week and have it for next week.
Yeah, she says we have no Bigfoot in Ireland because it's too small, just small foot like leprechauns. And
Yeah.
it's fun how many leprechaun traditions and stories have come over with people who have come over from Ireland and brought that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how many little leprechauns hid in trunks and suitcases and, found new homes.
I have come to a belief that they are all related in some way. Um, like cousins or something, all of them leprechaun. I
Why
mean,
not?
leprechauns are considered fae, but I think that like with Bigfoot, I think there's different kinds. Like there are some that are just like animals who can't do anything special; they just exist.
Mhm.
There's some who can walk dimensions. There's some who come from the aliens. There's some that are definitely in the Fae family.
Mhm.
So I think that with anything, you really have to be open to the possibility that we don't know anything about them. So the truth is every single belief about what the creature could be 100% true.
Right. Because we don't know for certain. So anything
You know, I,
could work and could be true until
yeah, absolutely.
now. I wonder when the government will make the announcement, like they've already announced, like, hey, guess what, guys, aliens are real. When they're finally going to be like,
Right,
guess what, Bigfoot's been working in the accounting department. He takes tea breaks, not coffee breaks.
right.
So,
When they finally tell us that X-Men got it right.
right.
Yeah.
When y'all
When
see him
he,
out in the woods because he's on vacation, and when you
yeah,
don't see him for weeks or months at a time, it's because he's back here working, crunching numbers, and the Pentagon
yes,
flirting
exactly.
down.
But because he looks the way he looks, we keep him in an office.
Yeah, he's not a people person.
He doesn't
Um,
like that, and that's why you don't see him a lot.
yes,
I
he
get
would
it, Bigfoot.
fed. I think they still
I
use
get
them
it.
in job applications. I know we had it for Borders, where anytime somebody would apply,
Mhm.
depending on how your online application went, you were either green, yellow, or red. Red was like, we don't hire you at all. Yellow was like, we hired you, but we kept you in the back. You were our inventory team.
Yeah.
And green were like, they're safe to put on the floor. So he
Yeah.
would be like a yellow. He's in the back.
Yellow, yeah.
Um, and boy, could you tell our yellows. Um, so I've always find it interesting when civilizations in history who had no communication with each other had the same folklore of specific
Yes.
creatures like angels. Exactly.
I
Um,
agree 1,000%. Um, I watch shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff, and when they go showing us that, you know, ancient civilizations in Europe and ancient civilizations like South America,
mhm,
they have the exact same, like deities and legends and stuff, just with different names. There's a carving and there's an Aztec carving that looks an awful lot like an astronaut in a space pod in a space suit.
mhm.
And then in another country, there's one that looks almost identical, but they're across the ocean from each other and they weren't supposed to have communication. So, how do they have the exact same thing?
Right.
So, I agree 100%, you know, and how perfectly all the pyramids of the world align with different, constellations and stuff.
Mhm. Yeah,
It,
that's always been so fascinating. And I used to watch a lot of Ancient Aliens when it first came out. The latter seasons, I was just kind of like, y'all are really reaching now. Um,
I haven't watched a whole lot. Like I haven't watched anything from the newer seasons because I'm just like, for me, it's like they got like 15 seasons or something. It's like, how much more can you guys talk? What else do you have to cover? Like, you haven't covered everything in the last 15 seasons
Yeah.
or however many you have.
That's why I feel like some of it got to be so out, like even for me, like outlandish. And this is just my opinion. Don't, if
Yeah.
you're still a fan of the show, more power to you. Like,
I,
and I will still put it on because that narrator's voice, like if I can't sleep, I'm out in like 5-10 minutes with his voice. So I will turn on
I'm telling you.
if not a true crime documentary, because there's a certain narrator in the true crime world who like I'm out and I'm like, that is better than any
Yeah.
sleep gummy ever. Just like listen and I'm out.
I get that, man, because I got some. I have some of them on DVD, and when I worked in a group home, third shift, I would put it in their DVD player, and I would just let Ancient Aliens play, and next thing I know, I'm sitting there on the couch, and I just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I started talking back to that. Or could it be aliens? Of course it is. That's why we're here. That's why this is. Of course it is.
Yeah, and everything I watch, I talk back to it because I'm like, yes, thank you. Somebody finally has some sense. And then a little later, it's like, okay, now just let that go because know that you're reaching, and even your face tells me that you know.
Yeah. Right. We'll see. The chupacabra, like I know of it for South America and lower parts of North America, but I did not realize like chupacabra is in, like, is it
West
over in
Virginia.
as well? Do they have a version over there?
I know I've heard of it in West Virginia.
Really? Well, it's West Virginia, like that whole state, and I can say this because I have family there, so I'm
Let,
allowed to talk crap about it.
me say, let's face it, West Virginia's got a lot going on. They got Bigfoot, Moth Man, Chupacabra.
For such a little state, they have so many things. It's because there's nothing else to do there.
Yeah.
And that whole right, West Virginia, the whole Appalachia region is just a very
Hotspot.
yeah.
We'll just call it a hotspot because that's the best way to describe it. I don't know what it is about that mountain range, but almost every single creature I've looked up that's an American creature, it's like it exists in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm like,
Of course it does.
we have other mountain ranges, don't we?
Of course it's this one. Why else would it be any other different one? And that's where sometimes it's where some of the skepticism starts to come out, right? And I'm like, is this story only attributed here because it's so famous for having all these other things? So like, let's put it there.
But you also got to go back in time though and look at some of the stories and figure out who started it, because you got to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much shine were you drinking when you saw it?
Right. Well, and the folk magic, right? And I love Appalachian folk
That's
magic.
fair.
And
That's
yeah.
I didn't think about that. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Chairs, like I would nearly classify Ancient Aliens as disinformation campaign in a bid to discredit legitimate theories, so people can lump you in with the loons if you start talking about such things, even if they are credible.
Yeah.
It's like you either love it or hate it.
Literally, literally.
Yeah. I enjoy the whole like expanding the thought of like what could be possible. Even I, especially like I said, those later seasons, I'm like, good Lord, like were you throwing darts at like possibilities just to try and make another episode? Kind of like what I felt like Stephen King was doing at one point when he was trying to get out of the one publishing contract. I'm like, ooh, lamp monster, grr, we're scared of the lamp monster. Like crank out that book and get out underneath the publisher.
Yeah, we're just putting stuff out now.
Yeah. Well, hey, we are over our hour.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. Not sure what we'll talk about yet next week. I think we'll do some research maybe into some folklore and some of these beings and see what we can find. And if you have stories that you would like to share, even if you want us to say it anonymously, feel free to email that in. And safe space, no judgment. What do we think of crop circles? I have a hard time with those because there have been so many people admitting to creating them.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things. It's like what you were saying about the lunacy and being able to throw legitimate experiences in with the crazy people. There's been so many people admitting that they've made them that it's like, okay, yes, there are some that I believe are 100% real. The problem is they've been proven to be so easy to make. It's like, are they real or did somebody make them? Now, I did hear at one point that they were telling the difference between man-made and extraterrestrial made by going out there and checking for like radiation.
Right.
The
Yeah,
real
that's good.
ones had high radiation. The real ones had high radiation. The human-made ones did not.
Hey, green-eyed witchy woman. Um, Chair says a really interesting video on YouTube about them. I also thought they were fake, but this one presented some really mind-blowing facts with receipts. It's on a channel called The Wife Files. So it might be something to check out, guys, if you want to go check out that channel.
Yeah, I mean, some people, man, I mean, but then they're, not to discredit that person whatsoever, but it's also like I was saying about, all there being so many man-made ones um, that can mess you up. It's like, some people are really good at telling their story good enough to convince you that they're telling, you know.
Yeah.
And it's sad that people lie about it because then you get the people like us who are like being serious about like we're really serious, like this really happened, or we really do believe that this is real. And now we're labeled crazy because people have lied about it and faked stuff so much. It's like it discredits everything. And it's but that's the way the human mind works, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you have any paranormal stories that you'd like to share, even if it's anonymously, we can always share the story but not say who it's from.
Yeah.
Feel free to send that on over to goddesselitellc@gmail.com, and let us know specifically, like, hey, don't say my name, like right up front. Safe space to share thoughts and stories. Like, given the field that I work in and given the field that Richie does on his pastime, ghost hunting, paranormal investigation, um, there's nothing too crazy that you can ask legitimately. Like, safe space, no judgment. But we do these talks every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. So feel free to join us. Turn on the alerts so you get a reminder that we're here talking away. Absolutely. You sure can share. Share stories that I have not experienced, but just lore from my village. Absolutely.
Okay, please.
Yeah, because you know what? Like we've all kind of said, like, how funny and interesting that some of these stories span the ocean, and
Yeah.
they shouldn't have back then.
Um, as per a conversation we had privately, I'm hoping that you can see it. I was finally able to get a link for my paranormal Facebook page.
Okay.
I sent it to you.
In
Um,
mail.
I I sent it. I actually sent it to the business chat because that's all I have for you.
Okay.
Well, besides this email you just put up that I just now realized was sitting in front of me.
No worries. We will open that up. Hold,
Mhm.
please. Cue intermission music.
But yeah, for that, same thing. Post whatever you want on there. Facebook has a little thing where you can post anonymously now. So if you don't want people to know who you are, just write it there. But my page is 100% judgment free. It's in the rules that if anybody is rude to anybody else because their experiences, they will be kicked out of the group immediately. No questions asked.
So we did put the link in chat. I know it's on the screen and it's not clickable on screen, but we are going to put that in chat. The link there should be clickable for you. Now, so this evening, Brooke will be back and Chris with me this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Woo Woo Wednesday readings, more of like the witchy discussion. So feel free to join us. We do this on Twitch only, just because we have a little more leeway of what we can get away with than what Facebook and the tubers will allow.
Yeah.
So join us this evening over on. Oh, you're welcome, and I hope school is going well for you. I sometimes miss school, and I'm like, no, I don't. Don't miss school. Chris will be offering not only tarot, but she is an animal communicator. And Brooke is way better at tarot. I'm the oracle and shaman sensing. So join us this evening, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Otherwise, join us back next Wednesday with Richie, 10 a.m. And even if you watch this on a replay and have questions, send those in and we'll get them answered.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.